Hey everyone, let's talk about articles in German. And by articles, I mean something like der, die, das, or also ein, eine, einen, or kein, keine, keinen. How do you use it and when do you use it? That's all that we are going to cover in this video. This is great for anyone who is new to this, or also if you are in the middle or at the end of A1 or even a more advanced student, this is going to be a great place to refresh all the basics that you need to know about using articles in German. All right, and without further ado, let's start by translating the English da. And that's already where the complication starts because English doesn't have genders. So let's look at the word Schal. Schal means scarf, and Schal is a masculine word. So that's why we say der Schal. So for example, I could say, der Schal ist schön. The scarf is beautiful. Or also I could say, wo ist der Schal? Where is the scarf? All right, let's look at neutral next. T-shirt, the T-shirt. In German, it's neutral, so we'll say das T-Shirt. For example, I could say, das T-Shirt ist groß. The T-shirt is big. Or, hier ist das T-Shirt. Here is the T-shirt. All right, this was masculine and neutral. Now let's look at feminine as well. For example, the jacket is feminine, so we have die Jacke in German. For example, die Jacke ist neu. The jacket is new. Or, ist die Jacke schön? Is the jacket beautiful? All right, and these were the three genders, but you also need to know the plural. For example, we can say the socks. In English, the da stays the same, even for plural, but for German, it also changes. It is die Socken. And you could think that this is the feminine article, but actually it is die for all plurals, no matter what is the gender of the plural. For example, I could say, die Socken sind alt. The socks are old. Or also I could ask, wo sind die Socken? Where are the socks? Now let's look at the overview. We have der Schal, das T-Shirt, die Jacke, and die Socken. So in the case of a feminine word, you can't tell the singular from the plural by looking at the article. That's the same as in English. In English, it's always the. But of course, the noun changes. In English, the plural always gets the letter S, but in German, that's not so simple. We have many different ways of forming plurals. And that's a topic for a separate video. And actually, I already made that. So if you want to learn all about how to build plurals in German, you can click on the link that's up here right now, and you'll see that. But for now, let's just continue here with articles. And before we continue in the video, let's briefly talk about all the symbols that I'm using in this video. So I have the blue square to symbolize nominative and the red square to symbolize accusative. Nominative is the subject in the sentence, the person or object that is doing something, and the accusative, that is one way of talking about objects in a sentence. And you'll see more clearly what I mean by that when we look at the sample sentences for the accusative. All right, and we also have genders. Blue stands for masculine, green for neutral, red for feminine, and orange for plural. And these colors are also often used in textbooks. So this should roughly match what you might see in other materials. All right. And then let's look at the indefinite article. So for example, in English, that is a. So as you know, scarf is masculine. So a scarf in German will be ein Schal. Ein is the masculine indefinite article. For example, I can say, das ist ein Schal. This is a scarf. Or I could say, ein Schal ist hier. A scarf is here. Next, let's look at T-shirt. As you know, T-shirt is neutral, so a T-shirt becomes ein T-shirt. And you see ein here is the same for neutral and masculine. That's no mistake. They are actually the same in this case. And an example sentence here is, wo ist ein T-Shirt? Where is a T-shirt? Or also, ein T-Shirt ist alt. A T-shirt is old. Next, let's look at feminine. For example, we have a jacket, and that is eine Jacke. So you see that's a bit different. We add the letter E at the end of ein to get the feminine. For example, I could ask, ist das eine Jacke? Is that a jacket? Or Ja, das ist eine Jacke. Yes, that's a jacket. All right. And for plural, we have nothing at all. Just like in English, you just say socks. And in German, we just say Socken. For example, das sind Socken. These are socks. Or Socken sind Kleider. Socks are clothes. All right. And again, let's look at the overview. Ein, eine, and nothing. All right, and now let's look at the negative article. The negative article doesn't exist in English, but whenever we say there is nothing of a certain noun, we use the German negative article. For example, no scarf in German is kein Schal. And you see already here on the top line, I still have the indefinite article. That's because the negative article in German, we always build it by looking at the indefinite one and just adding the letter K in front of it. So we have kein Schal. For example, das ist kein Schal. This is no scarf. Or kein Schal ist hier. No scarf is here. All right, and T-shirt, we saw already that the indefinite article is also ein. And so that means the negative article is going to be the same as well. In this case, it is kein T-shirt. For example, ist hier kein T-shirt? Is here no T-shirt? More naturally, perhaps in English, you'd ask, is there no T-shirt here? But I just do a literal translation, so it's even more obvious what's going on in German. And then we have, kein T-shirt ist alt. No T-shirt is old. All right. And feminine, we saw feminine, jacket, Jacke. The indefinite article is eine. That means the negative article is keine. For example, ist das keine Jacke? Is that no jacket? Then we can say, das ist keine Jacke. That's no jacket. All right. And then plural, that's a bit different because we saw in the case of the indefinite article, that's simply nothing. But of course, the negative article can't be nothing. So we again use the same as the feminine, as we saw with the definite article, is die, and plural is also die. And here is also keine for no socks. For example, das sind keine Socken. These are no socks. Or Socken sind keine Früchte. Socks are no fruits. All right, and let's look at the overview. Kein, keine, keine. All right, and now let's actually look at everything that we covered so far, all the nominative case articles. And you can see that there are a lot of similarities between masculine and neutral. Only the definite article der and das are different. Everything else is the same. And for feminine and plural, there are also a lot of similarities. The only difference there is that the indefinite article is eine for feminine and plural doesn't have one because plural just doesn't need an indefinite article. It's the same as in English. All right, so that's the nominative. That's about sentence subjects. But now let's look at the accusative as well. And let's start again with Schal, der Schal. That's the scarf. And in English, if you have the scarf as an object or as a subject, doesn't matter. But in German, if it's an accusative object, it becomes den Schal. So let me give you an example to make it clear. For example, ich habe den Schal. I have the scarf. And here, the subject of the sentence is I, because I'm in the central person. I'm the acting one or the one who has a preference or does something or has something. And then every sentence has only one subject, so automatically everything else is an object. And we have the verb haben, to have, and in German, haben to have requires an accusative. That's why we know that we need to use the accusative here. Let's look at another example. Ich mag den Schal. I like the scarf. Mögen, to like, also requires the accusative. That's why it is den Schal. And again, ich is the subject here. But the good news is that nominative and accusative are the same in every case that's not masculine. So you'll see, for example, now we look at das T-shirt. Das T-shirt is the same das T-shirt no matter whether it's accusative or nominative. For example, ich habe das T-shirt. I have the T-shirt. So this is, ich is the subject, ich is the nominative. Das T-shirt is an object, it's an accusative, but still it doesn't change. And also, ich mag das T-shirt. I like the T-shirt. And the same is also true for feminine, die Jacke, the jacket. For example, ich habe die Jacke, I have the jacket. Or ich kaufe die Jacke, I buy the jacket. Kaufen, to buy, is also a verb that goes with an accusative object. And lastly, plural, die Socken also remains die Socken. For example, ich habe die Socken, I have the socks. Or ich sehe die Socken, I see the socks. Sehen, to see, also goes with accusative. Let's look at the overview. You see here I have the nominative and the accusative listed, and the only change really is the masculine. And you'll see that's the same for the indefinite article and for the negative article as well. And that's what we look at next. So let's look at the indefinite article. Ein Schal in nominative as a subject becomes einen Schal as an object. So I'll say, ich habe einen Schal. I have a scarf. And I can also say, ich kaufe einen Schal. I buy a scarf. And the others, they are the same. So ein T-shirt remains ein T-shirt. For example, ich habe ein T-shirt. I have a T-shirt. Or ich sehe ein T-shirt. I see a T-shirt. The same is true for eine Jacke, a jacket. I can, for example, say, ich habe eine Jacke. I have a jacket. Or ich kaufe eine Jacke. I buy a jacket. And plural is the same as well. Socken is Socken. Ich habe Socken. I have socks. Or ich sehe Socken. I see socks. And again, here the overview, masculine is the only one that changes. And you can already guess it. The negative article is always built by adding a K. So it's also only the masculine that changes. Einen Schal, that is already accusative indefinite, then becomes keinen Schal. That's accusative negative article. So for example, ich habe keinen Schal. I have no scarf. More naturally would be, I don't have a scarf. But again, I do the literal translation here just to make it more clear. And then we have, ich kaufe keinen Schal. I buy no scarf, or I don't buy a scarf. And ein T-shirt becomes kein T-shirt, no T-shirt. For example, ich habe kein T-shirt. I have no T-shirt. Ich sehe kein T-shirt. I see no T-shirt. Feminine, eine Jacke, keine Jacke. Ich habe keine Jacke. I have no jacket. Ich kaufe keine Jacke. I buy no jacket. So this is all accusative. You just don't see it because nominative and accusative negative articles are the same, except in the masculine case. And the last one, Socken, becomes keine Socken. The indefinite article doesn't exist in a positive, but in a negative we have keine, same as feminine. For example, ich habe keine Socken, I have no socks. Ich sehe keine Socken, I see no socks. All right, and that is the overview of the negative article, and I'll also show you the overview of everything that we looked at today. So what you need to know to build sentences correctly in German is, what's the gender of the noun? Is it plural or is it not plural? And then you need to know, is it the or is it a in English? Or in the case of no, a negative something, you also need to know the gender, and then you'll be able to use the negative article. And lastly, for masculine, you also need to know the case nominative or accusative, because there is a change. Make no mistake though, in other cases, for example, dative and then also genitive, the neutral and feminine and plural articles, they will change. It's only in nominative and accusative that they are the same. So you can't just skip and ignore all these changes. You will still need to learn it eventually. Just for this case right now, all you need to know is the difference between nominative and accusative. All right, and that's all you need to know to get started. There will be a second video that is also still part of A1 that teaches you the same, but also about the dative, and I'll release that in the coming weeks. But for now, let's move on to a quiz to challenge you and check if you actually paid attention. So feel free to pause the video and practice this yourself, and I'll give you the solution right now. I have a scarf is ich habe einen Schal. I have the T-shirt is ich habe das T-shirt. I have no jacket is ich habe keine Jacke. And I have the socks is ich habe die Socken. All right, and that's all you need to know to get started with articles for A1. If you're interested in a complete curriculum that takes you from 0 to A1, including dialogues, vocabulary, and all the grammar you need to know, check the link in the video description down below. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video right here. Tschüss!